And welcome back to coverage here of the Strixhaven Championship. Marshall Sutcliffe with Paul Cheon. And we've got our last round of Historic coming up here, Paul, for the day. Interestingly, we have two challengers facing off in the feature match area right now. We've got Antonio Del Moral Leon, and he's playing up against Nathan Steuer on the other side of the battlefield. You can see these are two veterans of the game, though, having started 2008 and 2010, respectively. Of course, top finishes, Antonio has the toppest of finishes. He actually has won a Pro Tour. And Nathan has been on the grind for quite a while. You know, when the GP circuit was in full swing, you could find Nathan there more often than not, and always near the top of the tables as well. Finds himself, though, facing off against an interesting matchup here. In the hands of Antonio, we have the Boggles deck, at least for Historic. It's Azorius Auras, and on the other side is the most played deck, which is it Phoenix?
Yeah, and Antonio, rough start here. Had to mulligan that first hand. This hand looks pretty similar. He doesn't have, you know, those 2-mana payoff cards, but I feel like you're probably just going to kind of want to keep this and hope for the best. You have an Alseid in your hand. One of the key cards in the matchup, I believe, Staggering Insight as well. This allows you to race the Phoenix deck that a lot of people kind of expected kind of coming into this event. Meanwhile, taking a look at Nathan's side of the battlefield, you see a pair of Arclight Phoenixes along with a Faithless Looting in his hand.
Oh, God.
Is it Phoenixes or Phoenixes? Because I'm forever not going to know.
You can choose.
Okay, I'm going to go with Phoenixes then.
Okay, I'll go with you on that one.
But anyways, Nathan just needs to find a couple of mana sources here. Really wants to not miss a land drop here, but really good start here. Ooh.
Wow.
And he misses.
Right, so there's two things that happened here. One, he missed off of Faithless Looting, but he did get to discard 2 copies of Arclight Phoenix. So there is hope, but it's going to get really hot under the collar. He's likely to hit his land drop, probably overwhelmingly likely to, with another Faithless Looting in hand. So things could turn around for him here, but getting those Phoenixes back on the battlefield might take a while.
Oh, and this is really interesting. Antonio just going for the Staggering Insight. This Phoenix deck is full of reds. Oh no!
Oh no! Faithless Looting. There was a Pillar of Flame off the top. Plus, he already had one in his hand, plus a Lightning Axe. He has answers for the Alseid of Life's Bounty. He decided to take the risk. It seemed well worth taking the risk of casting Faithless Looting first, hit a red source, and kill your creature, and he missed!
Oh, and now a Core Spirit Dancer here from Antonio.
Into Cartouche that'll... Oh, boy.
Jeez. Antonio could even choose to play it a little safer if he wants, right? You can go with a Core Spirit Dancer and then just keep a mana up to protect the Spirit Dancer in case you're expecting something like a Lightning Axe. Because on the next turn, I mean, he can kind of do it all.
Yeah, it gets interesting because you could also make the argument, right, that the Alseid of Life's Bounty with the Insight on it is already a good enough must-kill threat. So you're basically presenting 2 of those, and, you know, you could even start to go off with the Cartouche. The downside is like, looking at Nathan's hand, if he's able to draw a red source here, he could just go zap, zap, and you have no board if you do that.
Yeah. The other line here is just going all that glitters plus Cartouche onto the Alseid, and that turns it into a 7/7. Meaning that Nathan needs to have exactly Lightning Axe plus Pillar of Flame to be able to get it off the battlefield, which Nathan has. So Nathan needs to draw a red source off the top here to get this out of... Oh,
God, he drew his main deck fried.
Jeez.
And we're done here. I really like that line from Antonio Del Moral Leon. That was the most aggressive stance that he could take. But getting your creature clear of any single removal spell there is awesome. And that was a really cool way to close out the game. It basically said check, right? Like, if you don't kill this thing now, you're just dead, and you're never going to be able to race it, you know, a 7/7 lifelinker. So Antonio Del Moral Leon picks up game number 1, and you got to feel for Nathan there. Boy, you keep the 1 lander off the back of 2 Faithless Looting, you fire them both off plus a draw step, and you can't hit a second land.
There's no way. There is no way you mulligan that hand. I mean,
No,
you have
no.
Faithless Looting, 2 Arclight Phoenix, and he had removal spells. He had a Lightning Axe and a Pillar of Flame to deal with, whatever 2-drop that Antonio could play out. His hand was perfect. All he needed was to string together some lands, and the likelihood of finding those lands off the Faithless Lootings is just so high, right? I mean, the fact that he missed off of a double Faithless Looting, I mean, the percentages on that have got to be extremely low.
Yeah, the real question, I think, the keep seemed to be totally correct. The interesting inflection point was you play Faithless Looting, you miss. Your opponent has an Alseative Life's Bounty, and then they put Insight on it. They hit you and they say go. They can't protect it at the moment. Now you have to decide on whether to cast another Faithless Looting, looking for the second land into red source, into kill your creature, or you can take the very conservative route of simply firing off a removal spell on that Alseid and saying, look, if you don't have this on the board, you can play something else. I can go for the Faithless Looting next turn, and I might even just draw a land naturally. It didn't feel crazy to me when Nathan went for the Faithless Looting, but there are worlds where he draws like non-land card island and it doesn't work out super well. Those type of things can happen too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a calculated risk. I think if Nathan didn't have exactly Lightning Axe in his hand, he would have likely gone for the Pillar of Flame. Mm-hmm. But given that he had a Lightning Axe in hand, he probably thought, you know what, there's a pretty good shot that even if I miss, which is, the worst case scenario, even if I miss on our red source, next turn, there's a pretty decent chance that I can still kill this creature with a Lightning Axe. At the same time, I mean, missing back-to-back land drops in a row is just so devastating. Maybe you need to kind of go for that risk.
Yeah. If it were me, I would have done what Nathan did. I would have gone for the Faithless Looting as well. It just didn't work out for him that turn. You have to be willing to take some risk, to make sure that you put yourself in a position to actually win a game of Magic rather than just simply hang in there. Now he's looking at a lot of cards here as Nathan, as we see him fire off Opt into Brainstorm.
Yeah, and as you can see, a very key sideboard card here from Antonio, the Cerulean Drake. Now, we've seen a few of Antonio's matches in the featured matches, and they were against the Jeskai Turns deck, where it was okay, but it wasn't great, right? It just kind of stood there and absorbed the damage that Velomachus would have provided. But at the same time, the Velomachus still just ran away with the game with all the cards that you got out of it. Here, it has been fantastic, right? Because this just single-handedly stops Sprite Dragon and Arclight Phoenix from doing what it's trying to do. And so I think, the primary reason why you see these Drakes in the sideboard are for this matchup, not necessarily the Jeskai Turns one.
Well, good. Because, Paul, I'm ready to see Cerulean Drake actually be great. Because it's been pretty medium when we've seen it. But here, yeah, that's a stop sign. Is there any way for Nathan to get through it?
Stormwing Entity?
Entity can start attacking. Okay, that's a thing.
Nathan also has a couple of copies of Brazen Borrower in his sideboard. So Brazen Borrower seems like a fantastic card in this matchup. So I imagine he's going to be looking to bring that in and looking for that card specifically here.
Makes sense.
But yeah, Antonio might just... Oh, there it is. Looks like he might just want both. Hit your land drop. Anytime you scry two to the top, as the opponent, you're like, oh my god, they're drawing 2 cards on top. But as the player, you're like, I feel like I didn't get my value because I didn't scry anything to the bottom.
Right, I was gonna get these anyway.
Yeah.
Didn't even reorder them, It's like no value at all. Selfless Savior is gonna hit the battlefield right ahead of a core Spirit Dancer here.
Ooh, and here is where you will see the downside of all these decks playing the full 4 copies of Pillar of Flame over playing some Shocks as well. Because now with the Pillar of Flame, with this interaction of Selfless Savior plus Core Spirit Dancer in play, Nathan, with the removal spells at least, will not be able to get the Core Spirit Dancer off the battlefield this turn.
That's right. Now, if he wants to, he can fire off a Brazen Borrower.
Yes.
Or I should say a Petty Theft. But gosh, you got to kind of feel like we might reach a stage in the game a little bit later where getting that Cerulean Drake off the battlefield for even a turn could be enough to clear the way for, say, a big Sprite Dragon that we see hit the battlefield here.
Yeah, definitely. Oh.
Okay, Faithful Saluting after the Sprite Dragon is going to pump it up to a 2-2. Also, Stormwing Entity's up to 4-4 here for the turn. And may as well get the train rolling here on the Pillar of Flame.
Maybe he won't sack the
Spirit Dancer. Yeah, it's a little hopeful. From a game theory standpoint, it's usually better to target the thing that they have to,
right.
Like meaning you should target the dog here. But of course, you know, Antonio's not going to make the mistake here. And the Stormwing Entity, you mentioned it, Paul. Bang, just hit for 5.
Right, but now we're going to see. We're going to see Antonio get to do his thing this turn, right? He's got 2 auras in his hand, can draw multiple cards, gain some life. Also has the option of using Declaration in Stone on the Stormwing Entity if he's concerned about the blue permanent that's in play, because the Cerulean Drake does a good job of brickwalling the red threats in the deck.
Core Spirit Dancer is going to pick up a Staggering Insight, and that jumps it all the way up to a 3-5 just off of that 1 aura.
Wow, and that is a great draw here from Antonio. Now he gets to play around Petty Theft as well, as he does have an Alseid in his hand.
Oh, yeah, excellent. This is also, of course, the problem when you're trying to race with your Stormwing Entity and your opponent has access to Staggering Insight. It's going to be very, very difficult, particularly on Spirit Dancer, which gets so big so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it really feels like when you look at Antonio's list, I mean, he was really targeting the Izzet Phoenix deck.
He was, wasn't he? It does feel that way. This feels so much different than the matchups that we've seen Antonio play, where he was playing against the Jeskai Turns deck, where, you know, again, the Drake does things but isn't exactly the hammer, right? And here, I put myself in Nathan's shoes, and I'm just like, how do you possibly maneuver around all of the stuff that Antonio has here? It seems very difficult.
So given that there's a Beacon Bolt in the graveyard here, you will likely see the Alseid target the Core Spirit Dancer, give it protection from red. Could be blue.
Could be blue.
But that doesn't matter too much because Nathan can, of course, just Petty Theft on upkeep.
Right.
And the Core Spirit Dancer does get bounced, but it's not dead. Antonio does have the option of just replaying it next turn. Start putting some more auras onto his creatures. And I mean, this Cerulean Drake, you know, still doing a good job of keeping this Sprite Dragon at bay. Now the Petty Theft has been used on the Spirit Dancer, which means it's going to be that much more difficult to get this Drake off the battlefield.
Yeah, also interesting that the Staggering Insight's gone now. So the race possibility with Stormwing Entity is back on the table now for Steuer.
Oh, excuse me. Of course, making it protection from blue would make the Staggering Insight fall off. So red would be, of course, the call there on the sacrifice.
There you go.
Of course, Nathan did have the Petty Theft here.
Land off the top here for Antonio.
So if Antonio wants to stem the bleeding, he could just go for a Declaration in Stone potentially on the Beacon, the Stormwing Entity, and put Luris into his hand. That could be a consideration, and then kind of set up for a strong turn next turn.
Okay, looks like Deck and Stone's going to take care of Stormwing Entity. Okay, and Luris is going to go into hand here for Antonio before passing the turn back. Tapped out.
And yeah, I mean, oh, you got to be pretty happy if you're on Antonio's side if that's the play that your opponent is going with.
Sentinel's Eyes off the top of the library here, but we've got a nice turn lined up here for Antonio.
Yeah, probably going with the Spirit Dancer here first. try to start loading up on some enchantments. If Nathan does have some good instant speed removal spells, you can of course get the Core Spirit Dancer back with the Luris. Being mindful that you probably want to do that on a turn where you do have access to 5 mana, so your opponent doesn't have the opportunity to react. Oh no, going for the Luris here instead.
Maybe just one Staggering Insight. Let's see. Selfless Savior, Ulceative Life's Bounty, also options. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but you go with the Selfless Savior. Now Nathan is going to be forced to fry the Luris here, I imagine. You do want to get that Luris off the battlefield, as that'll just continue to accrue card advantage here for Antonio. It's very unfortunate, though, because Nathan does know about the Core Spirit Dancer in Antonio's hand. But if the Selfless Savior resolves, it's not like your removal spells would have gotten it off the board anyways.
That's right. Forcing Nathan into kind of awkward plays here. Now the Core Spirit Dancer can come down.
And Nathan's had a ton of removal, but Antonio's just been doing a great job of just fighting through all of them.
Yep.
And now, I mean, we have the Beacon Bolt, but that's it. You know, Nathan doesn't have any removal left, so that clears the way for Antonio to start piling on auras with that Core Spirit Dancer in play.
Yeah, this next turn could be truly explosive here for Antonio, as he's going to be incentivized to start dropping Ether Tunnel, Sentinel's Eyes, and get a bunch of cards rolling.
And Nathan debated,
considering, yeah, flashback looting, it looks like.
Right, but also considering whether or not he wants to play out the Sprite Dragon first.
Right.
If he does this, he does have a chance. See, he's not going to have the 3 spells, though, so this is pretty unfortunate for him.
Right.
He does have a pair of Arclight Phoenixes in the graveyard, but pretty far away from being able to actually cast 3 spells here. Could just cast a Beacon Bolt now, maybe, to get a Selfless Savior off the battlefield. Ugh, that's another cheap aura.
Wow. This is going to be a lot. Antonio just needs to figure out how he wants to sequence things here. He knows that Nathan's down to just 1 card left in hand.
Oh, and this is nice. I mean, Sentinel's Eye specifically, just because now you could potentially even put that onto a Cerulean Drake if you wanted to, and have it play offense and defense.
Oh, that's nice.
Will give it vigilance.
I like that. Yeah, it's always tempting to just put things on the Spirit Dancer itself because of the inherent bump, but that's kind of cool too. Let's see what he ends up going with here. Yeah, he's just going to go for the Spirit Dancer. I mean, it will be a very quick clock. It'll be a 2-turn clock by the time. Ooh, all said and done. There's Staggering Insight,
with the Ether Tunnel, too?
Yeah.
This is going to be huge.
This is really disgusting stuff now from Antonio Del Moral Leon. He's going to go for the Ether Tunnel, get another card. Draw a card? Sure. Why not? Ooh, yep. SRAM. But let's not be greedy. Let's just throw Staggering Insight on this thing. Just a cool 11-11 lifelinker, and it's going to draw you, or sorry, 13-13, and it's going to draw you a card.
Hey, should we give it a flying too?
12-13. Oh my God, it's even bigger. What is going on? I guess it can't quite be lethal.
Is this lethal? I mean, it's got to be lethal though, right? Like, it's not lethal, but it is lethal.
It's lethal. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's lethal. It's actually literally lethal, 15-16.
Oh, my goodness.
And that is going to be the match going to Antonio Del Moral Leon. Oh, my God. That looked like an absolute nightmare for Nathan.